Hi, I'm Tyler, and this is the Fox Valley Film Critics, By the Fire. In this episode of the show, we're going to be discussing the next in the lineup of the AFI's Top 100 American Movies, Bonnie and Clyde, as well as the newest Netflix-exclusive movie, Apostle. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome to the show, brought to you by Groupthink Productions and FVTV. Joining us once again is regular guest Terry.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Fist bump. That time I got it right. I know. I always get caught in some weird kind of handshake, fist bump limbo.
Yeah, it's like occasionally it goes turkey.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Well, paper always beats rock, so you could just go off of that and call it a day.
So anyway, first film on the docket is Bonnie and Clyde. Are you familiar with this at all?
Yeah, I watched it. I first watched it, I think I was either in college or in high school. So, but I just watched it again today. I rented it off of Prime Video. It's just so I could refresh my knowledge of it and everything. And I forgot how just awesome of a movie it was. It was actually really awesome. And I looked up the director, Arthur Penn, and just to kind of get, and he's actually, I've seen a couple of his other movies. I can't think of any right now, but he was a pretty well-known director. And I was wondering if we could talk about like, oh man, because it's so funny, in '67, like this was a violent movie. And
yeah.
The violence probably wouldn't really hold a candle to anything today.
No, not at all.
But I think it's still kind of, because it was all real. The shootings and everything like that, but it was so funny when I saw the climactic ending. I was like, Godfather, anyone? I was like, I mean, you're missing Sonny just spinning around screaming, but it was almost very Godfather-esque. I'm like, oh, maybe Ford Coppola put a little nod. Yeah, put a nod there. But yeah, what'd you think of it?
I thought it was very good. I mean, I think part of the reason why it's just shocking is because you get conditioned watching certain generations of film. So if you watch like a black and white movie, you're gonna be really, really shocked if you came across one with like extreme graphic violence and nudity, like just in a 1940s movie. It's just like, this doesn't fit. This doesn't fit at all. So seeing it, I was a little bit amused. I mean, it's a great movie. I was a little amused by just the content of it, because it's like, it looks like a 60s movie, like the way it's shot, the way the film stock looks. But then they add all the violence, and it comes off as so quaint.
Yeah.
It's just like, edgelord violence. Like there's that. I think it really kind of hit home, like the first scene of the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Bonnie is hanging out at home and she's not wearing clothes, and the camera and they do that thing where they just like have her walk in front of things the whole time so you don't see anything, and it's just like, oh, scandalous. You see her back.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, like this is like super like 60s.
Yeah, we had to wait till the 70s when Chinatown came out, right? Isn't that when when Faye Dunaway bare it all, I guess? I don't know if she bare it all before then, but those are like the only two big movies that I know Faye Dunaway from. Yeah. But no, and that opening scene was actually really, like, that just show like when you have really good actors, and I read something that I thought was hilarious. Warren Beatty actually like kind of robbed the studios, but unintentionally, because the studios thought the movie wasn't going to do well. So not only did they pay him $200,000, but they gave him like, it was like something like 40 to 70% of the gross, and the movie made over $50 million. So he was like, and this is in '67, so he was an instant millionaire. I don't know what he had before then, but it was just he probably had that cigar in his mouth going, ha ha, yeah, because I would have been like that too. He's like, I was robbing banks in a movie, now I'm going to the bank just stuffing all this money in there and everything. But
Warner was like, no,
right, like, what have we done? But it was said with the great acting, especially Faye Dunaway, she's just awesome. But in that first scene, it's like, you have to they're just like, be bored. Show us boredom, and she did it really well. She's like going back and forth, banging on the bedpost. So it's just like, you could totally like bored. If I had to give any like two characters who I really didn't like, and one of them is probably going to be shocking, I thought Gene Hackman's character as Buck was a little hokey.
This was early Gene Hackman.
Yeah, that's true. And his wife just annoyed me. Like, I was like, the whole time, even though I know it didn't happen, I'm just sitting there like, Bonnie, slap her. I was like, just slap her, Bonnie. I was like, because, we're in 2018. Women slapping women is okay. But it's like, Bonnie, just slap her. But no, it's a movie that I think a lot of people would still enjoy today. One, because it doesn't have that black and white factor to it. Like you said, I think if it was black and white, a lot of like younger people, if they saw it, would be like, eh. And Warren Beatty's not that big of a name. He still was a name when I was a kid because Dick Tracy came out when I was in grade school. But I don't think Warren Beatty's really, to like the younger, I don't think he's that big of a name anymore, is he?
No, I don't think you're going to get a lot of kids nowadays being like, dude, I saw this great Warren Beatty film.
Yeah. But Bonnie and Clyde, I think, are still very relevant. And probably, I mean, they're doing a new series on Netflix about them. Yeah. So, I mean, Bonnie and Clyde are still very relevant. I mean, you had two of the most, like, notorious bank robbers of all time. Like, I mean, if you think bank robbers, who do you think? You think Pretty Boy Floyd, Dillinger, Bonnie and Clyde, pretty much.
I mean, obviously the film's famous for the impact.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about it in another episode recently with Midnight Cowboy. Just like impact goes a long way when it comes to getting on the FI list because obviously, as I said, it's kind of quaint now, even compared to the other movie we're gonna watch, but we watched for this.
Yes.
Like obviously, violence tumbles as time goes on to the point where things don't shock you, so they have to find new ways to shock you. And it starts with Bonnie and Clyde ending with people shooting each other, and it ends in Bone Tomahawk, with the most horrifying death scene I've ever seen in a movie. But
and you also have to realize too, like if you compared things in that era. I mean, this was '67. Sam Peckinpah was making movies then, and Sam Peckinpah was like the '60s version of Tarantino. Everybody dies in Sam Peckinpah movies, and they die horrifically too.
Yes, I've seen Salad Days, but. Made the cameraman giggle. Anyway, I mean, obviously something like Sam Peckinpah, that's off the beaten path. Like, that's not something that's Hollywood released. You go to the Grindhouse Theater for that.
Sure.
Or England, either one. I'm sure they're both roughly equivalent.
But I do, I think that the character. I mean, the thing that I like too, because I didn't remember this, and but I also like because this totally could have been like the very big. Love story, and in the 60s, the movies were starting to not only do violence but more sex. Like a lot more sex was in movies, and they could have done that with this. But they also stuck to the whole. A lot of people say it may not have been true, but it was about Clyde being impotent, like he couldn't perform, and they stuck to that in the movie because there was plenty of times where Bonnie was like, "Hey, we just robbed a bank. We shot out with the cops. Everything's kind of groovy," and he's like, like, what is he? I told you I'm no lover boy, or like I'm not much of a lover boy, baby. Like, so I like that they kind of stuck true to that because they could have changed that. So I think that, I just think I think if you want a real good Bonnie and Clyde, I think this still is a relevant Bonnie and Clyde to watch. If you want I don't know how the true Bonnie and Clyde, but it's a good Bonnie and Clyde. Yeah, it's a good Bonnie and Clyde to watch.
Sure, definitely. It's weird for saying this is a Hollywood movie, considering this is obviously like edgy violence. But the more I think about it, the more it hits me just how much this is like a '60s film. Like again, lots of '60s films we're talking about right now, just in terms of what's kind of bunching up these episode recordings. But like you kind of get the sense this movie is about like them as like the symbols of that generation of being like free love and violence and building your own morality and gaining fame for it. And then obviously the final scene, the man finally catches up with them and destroys them in the most brutal way possible. So you can definitely see some of the clash between like counterculture and authority that was obviously a huge deal at the time in this.
And I like too, like with going off of that, like I think that Warren Beatty has one of the best lines. Anytime he ever gets in any trouble, like he has to kill somebody, or in the grocery store when he's pulling a gun at the guy, like tries to hit him with the meat cleaver, and he's like, "I ain't got nothing against him. I ain't got nothing against him. Like I'm one of them. Why are they I'm just a common man that's robbing you to get something to eat. Why are you trying to kill me? I'm just pointing a gun at you and robbing you. Why? I am not against you." It's like well. Yeah, you kind of are. You're going in and committing armed robbery on like these poor people and stealing all their, like, you know, it started with grocery stores and things like that. It's like you are kind of against them.
Yeah.
It's like and like you said with the fame, I think it was like they made themselves famous like that, but I think like that whole Robin Hood thing just sticks with everybody. Like even Dillinger was like, there's that famous line where Dillinger robs the bank and he's like, I'm here for the bank's money, not for yours, when the lady goes to hand him the purse. And it's like, I think a lot of these robbers thought of themselves as the Robin Hood character.
They parodied that great in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah.
If you've seen that. He's like,
oh, yeah.
He goes and robs the bank, and then he just walks away from the money and sits in the forest really depressed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Was that George Nelson, right? Wasn't that the character's train?
Yeah,
Babyface
something
Nelson,
like that.
Yeah.
Babyface.
Yeah.
Don't call me Babyface.
Right?
She
didn't mean nothing by it, George.
That's all the time we have for this segment. Come join us for the next segment. We'll be discussing the Apostle. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the show. So now we get to talk about Apostle, which is something I've been very, very excited to talk about. How familiar are you with the Raid movies?
Not very. I looked at the director and I can't remember his name, but the one that I know that he did, the one that I do know, but I never watched was VHS 2, which kind of gave me an idea on who he was. So, but I'm not familiar with the Raid movies. So.
Oh man, you are missing out.
Am I? Okay.
The Raid movies are like top of the shelf of modern action movies.
Okay.
They're both martial arts movies that were. He's a Welsh director. Mm-hmm. He moved to Indonesia for like 5 years, and he met a martial arts guy who actually does martial arts, and they just built this action franchise around this guy, and they made 2 movies out of it, and they're both spectacular.
Okay.
So, I mean, most anyone who I know who's seen them is basically like they're like masterpieces of action.
Okay.
So I was very excited going into this just because same director, not going to do action movies like that, at least right now, and he's going to do a completely different genre of film. And going into it, it's a horror film, essentially.
I was thinking about that too. I was going to ask you, I would put it more in line with the psychological thriller. Like, does it meet the horror requirements? Yeah, there's some gore. Yeah, there's some, but there's not.
It's a very scaled back horror film,
okay.
Which it's fascinating because it's kind of the opposite of The Raid. The Raid is very bombastic and shaky and out there, and I kind of like that. It means that he's trying to kind of explore his impulses and do something that's opposite end of the spectrum of what he's normally known for, which I think is a really good impulse if you're a director. It's obviously give yourself more range, see what you can do. And I don't know if the film benefits from that or detracts from it. Like, what are your thoughts on the film?
I liked it. I think I liked that it, like I said, going off the psychological thriller part, I like that it gives you an idea on what's going on, and then when he gets there, you kind of paint your own idea of what's going on, where like you're like, okay, so it's like this sister was kidnapped by some weird religious cult.
Yeah, that basic premise. Guy goes rescues sister from a cult.
And then he gets there, and then you're like, okay, there's all this weird cult stuff going on. But then as it progresses and you see things, you're like not to spoil, it's like, but there's quote unquote a monster that you kind of get a glimpse of in the beginning, and you're like, okay, so now it's like, oh crap, is this cult like the real deal? Are they really worshiping something, or is it just, like some brainwashed crazy whatever? So I like that it definitely makes you think. You kind of get this whole like, okay, what's going on, like where it doesn't just spell it out for you. So that's why I kind of went with more of a psychological as opposed to a horror, where a horror it's just kind of like, I think horror is like, here's the gore, here's the monster, here's this is what's going on, where this kind of makes you question like, what is going on?
Yeah, but the horror elements mostly come into the really gory aspects,
Mm-hmm.
which are clearly kind of highlight scenes of the film.
Yes.
Because there's 2 very huge, maybe 2 or 3, 2 very huge torture scenes in the film. And the film builds up to it, and then it just really holds on it for like a couple minutes during whenever it gets a chance to do it. And it doesn't quite go all the way with the level of gore it possibly could.
Sure.
Which I kind of appreciate, because there's one moment where you think, oh my gosh, how much is this film about to show me?
Yes. I thought the same thing.
Yeah, and then it kind of pulls back at the last minute and just lets it happen at a distance and just lets the horror of the moment take place, which works really well actually. So, which I appreciated. I mean, I'm not sure how I feel about this overall because I think I need to just do a deep dive into the criticism and just start thinking about it because this is a movie it's not what I expected it to be, but that's not a bad thing. And I think I need to give it some time to simmer and just kind of watch it a couple times and reflect, and I think I'll come to an appreciation of it as I go along. I don't think it's a masterpiece compared to as maybe The Raid, but I'd say I really liked it overall.
Yeah, and Matt, what you said was good. It's I definitely think that it's one that you kind of have to sit with for a while because it's not what you think it is going into it. But as far as like the other parts, God, I'm gonna forget his name, but the guy that played Legion, the actor.
Lee's the lead actor, right?
Huh?
Is he the lead?
Yeah, the lead actor did a fantastic job. I think that his character was like a really good character, and I don't know what anybody looked like in the 1800s or early 1900s that was addicted to laudanum, but I'm assuming he played that part really well. Like he looked like he was actually addicted to laudanum.
I had never seen Legion, so I'm not familiar with him, but I was a little. I thought his character was a little underdeveloped until you find out his backstory.
Which, yeah, because it's like and I think that kind of plays into the whole like what's going on here because it's like they drop these little hints that everybody isn't what they seem, and like there's the one part in the church when they know that there's an intruder, and he's making them go through the quotes of the book, and it's just getting closer to him, and then you're like, oh man, like how is he gonna get out of this? And then that no spoilers or anything like that, but then that part happens, and he ends up not having to go through that trial and kind of. So yeah,
it ends up the opposite. Like they like him now.
Yeah, one of us. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of twists and turns, but I think as far as like a major twist, I think when you realize what is actually on the island and what they're worshiping and everything like that, like the whole that reveal, I think it was actually pretty well worth it because I think if they would have just made it an actual, this is just some mindless cult of people like three guys that landed on an island that said, we can make it better, but they're going to worship us.
There's another movie that just came out that kind of does that. Have you heard of Mandy?
No.
I'm very tempted to try. I wanted to talk about it at some point on the show, but I don't think I'm going to be able to because it only got like a tiny release. Mm-hmm. But it's a Nicolas Cage movie that just came out. Okay. It's very similar style. Huh?
I said he's still acting. Wow.
It's like a tiny indie movie.
Oh, okay.
But it's very similar like structurally. It's like a cult kidnaps a close family member and he goes to try to stop it, but it goes in a completely different direction. So that movie, it starts out like a really like sad movie about like people who are like depressed, and then it turns into like the most insane Nicolas Cage action movie where he forges an axe, starts snorting cocaine and kills demons.
Puts on John Travolta's face and just goes to work.
It doesn't go that far, but okay. It goes pretty far. To the point where he grabs the cultist by the head and screams, "I'm your god!"
Oh God, that's got to be great.
It is the most amazing movie.
Do you know what I just?
It's amazing. Well, I just thought of that because that movie does kind of do what you're saying, or is like it does it a little more conventionally.
Sure.
But it goes in the opposite direction in that it takes every other element and just blows it up.
Sure.
So I was thinking of that movie a lot in comparison to Apostle, where Apostle is very muted, and then the elements that tend to get like expanded on or are like the gory elements and like the plotty twists and stuff like that. It's a different kind of movie.
I just had like an aha moment. I think Apostle would have been what M. Night Shyamalan could have made The Village had M. Night Shyamalan been making R-rated movies back then.
Ooh.
Because The Village was so smartly done. But that big reveal at the end was like, oh God! It's like in The Village. It's like I just wanted the monsters to be real. Like I
haven't seen The Village, so
you haven't. Oh,
no, it's
spoiler.
Fine. It's fine.
Sorry, but
that's like borderline on. But that's right before Shyamalan became unwatchable. So
yeah, so it's like, so I think that overall, it also like got to give Netflix prop. Netflix is getting really good. Like they're having with their.
This is like their best season ever.
Yeah.
They have a Jeremy Saulnier film, which we talked about on the show. They have Gareth Evans. They have Orson freaking Welles, Alfonso Cuarón, Martin Scorsese, And then there's going to be a Kurt Russell Santa Claus movie this year.
That's got to be great.
Kurt Russell Santa! I am so happy.
Santa Pliskin or just Santa? Escape from North Pole and like John Carpenter. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh my gosh, Netflix, you need to make this happen.
Right? But we got it on film, so that's copyrighted right here. That's so.
I own this idea.
Right,
please,
that's right.
Please give me $1 million and I'll make this movie for you. I work cheap.
But no, overall, I think Apostle is because one of the worst things about Netflix is you're like, I want to watch something on Netflix. Maybe. Oh my God, it's been 3 hours. Maybe. This is actually one that I can say, watch it. You'll
I could watch 8 hours of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
I mean, it's good for binge. Yeah.
The only thing I don't like about
binging anymore, they're actually getting. I think they're coming into their own.
The only thing I don't like about Netflix for new movies is that it's a different experience watching a Netflix movie.
Sure.
Because if you watch a movie in a theater, it just puts you with the movie. If you watch it on Netflix, it feels like very lackadaisical and it gets harder to focus on it. It gets hard to just like put yourself fully into it. So sure. I had to watch this a couple times just to fully get the grasp of everything that happened in it. Because if you're like me, it's just like if you sit at home and you just get really tempted to look at your phone and wait, what's happening now?
Yeah, right. Yes, yeah.
That's all the time we have for this segment. Join us for the final segment where we'll be getting his movie recommendation for this week. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the final segment. We're going to hand things over to Terry now for this week's movie recommendation.
Oh, it's a book because I have the movie, but I couldn't find my copy. But it's Terry Gilliam's 1998 Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It's one of my favorite books by one of my favorite authors. It's about Hunter S. Thompson as his alter ego, Raoul
Alter
Duke.
ego.
Yeah, that too. As his alter ego, Raoul Duke, and his lawyer, Dr. Gonzo. They actually get commissioned by his magazine to write about a prestigious event called the Mint 400, which is like a big motorcycle race in the desert of Las Vegas. And basically what they end up doing is just taking the money that they got from the newspaper, getting a buttload of drugs and taking drugs the entire time and convincing themselves that what they're doing is chasing the American dream because they're getting money for free to just go stay in a Las Vegas hotel and do copious amounts of drugs. And you know, it's funny, I was thinking when I had it, I'm like, I've just really been into Hunter S. Thompson lately, and I'm like, what can I was like, I'm just going to plug it because I'm interested in it. But then tonight, the first episode, and even you and I brushed on counterculture, and Hunter S. Thompson was counterculture. I mean, to give you a brief history of him, he invented gonzo journalism, which is basically injecting yourself into the story. And he did that with Hell's Angels. He actually joined the Hell's Angels and wrote articles about them. But basically his whole thing was just drugs. Like, then that's kind of what, but I think even for 98, Terry Gilliam, who is basically like the wackiest of all the Monty Python players.
Yeah.
He was the perfect director for this movie because the visual effects of like one thing, like floors melting and giant bats swooping out of the sky on the car that aren't really there as they journey through the desert at 100 miles an hour on all different kinds of drugs. And it's like, and the best part about this is like a lot of it is true, but it gets to the point to where it's just such madness that you're like, how true is this? But you don't know because like the whole thing is basically, I think Gilliam did a good point of like where it's like, you're focusing on these two guys, but you're actually there with them. So it's basically like you're doing as many drugs as they are, and you're seeing the things that they're seeing. And I think it's a fun movie. Not that I condone the Hunter S. Thompson's behavior or promote it, but
do all drugs at the same time.
Exactly. And then just drive 100 miles down the desert freeway onto Las Vegas, and you'll be fine. And pick up hitchhikers. But no, I think it's a really fun movie. There's really no plot to it, other than just watch these two guys just make total animals of themselves in Las Vegas. Basically, in a time when I think it's kind of, if there was anything, it kind of gets you to the point where it's like, man, you can't get away with that now. Like, if there was ever going to be a Hunter S. Thompson, he needed to be in the late 60s and early 70s, because nowadays you couldn't get away with what they did because most people were still very naive And I think, but like, it's to me, it's one of my favorite books. That's got one of the best opening lines ever. And they do the opening line in the movie. It's like we're somewhere on the. We were miles outside of Barstow on the edge of the desert when the drugs began to take hold. And it's like, as soon as that line hits, you're like, man, it's going to be this kind of movie. And I mean, and like, again, Gilliam was the best director to do for this, because Gilliam is just weird enough to get Hunter S. Thompson's vibe and inject it into the movie. Did you ever see the movie?
I've seen half of it.
Okay.
I had 2 points I was going to make on that. I tried playing this, I tried doing a Gilliam marathon with my friend of mine over the summer. And of all the ones we watched, this one did not gel the best, because I think, as you said, there's not really a plot to it, so it's hard to kind of really just get a grip on it. You got to groove on it. I don't think we were really in the right mood for that, so it doesn't play great to a group when you're just trying to do friendo movie night.
Sure.
I'll give it another shot at some point, because I like Gilliam, and at some point this year, Man Who Killed Don Quixote will come out, so I'll have an excuse. But my other point is, I just finished reading Gilliam-esque about a month ago.
Okay.
And he talks about that briefly. He doesn't go in depth on it, but there's a lot of interesting things he brings up. Like I think this is the second or third in his trilogy of Hollywood movies he did in the 90s, which was Fisher King, 12 Monkeys, and then this. So briefly he came back to Hollywood right between his various European exiles, and this is one of the ones he did, and just to kind of get. Because it wasn't necessarily a paycheck job, because he did actually go out and reach out to Hunter S. Thompson, and Johnny Depp hung out with him for a while and just kind of grooved with him and got a sense of what he was like, and just to get it like. But the backstory behind it's cool if you like Gilliam. That's all the time we have for this episode of the show. If you like this episode, you can find past recordings at the Groupthink Productions YouTube page. You can follow me on Twitter at antisocialcriti. That's critic without the C at the end. And you can find past my written reviews at Geeks Under Grace. I'm Tyler with Fox Valley Film Critics. Have a wonderful day.